Welcome to Draw Process. I'm Ike. I'm going to draw page 56 of First Sun and Sword today. Didn't start the camera quite in time for that first panel, the first thumbnail. These are, when I draw these, you've seen me do it. I tend to work out the vision of how these images would come to me. They're almost like paintings, how each one would come to me, or camera shots. Trying to arrange them, but lately it seems I'm making a few pages of these images and then picking my favorites, then composing them together. And so what we have here is Sword and Sun approaching the door. I've got two panels that are the same, two different ideas for this. One, they're traveling left to right. One, the door's right in front of them. These next two panels, they're side by side. We have Sword turning back to the dragoness. So as they were walking in this first panel, she's going to yell. So she's woken up and she just yells from off panel for them to wait. But she's still injured. She can't attack them. She can't even stand up. Or if she can stand, she's falling over. And so she's going to yell, wait, and then we have her face there in that panel. Now this one is like, okay, maybe I don't want to take too much time to show her looking around the room, but I want some. But if we show, I would like to get through this part with her in one page, not two or three. So that's part of it, but it's also she's not the main character. So if we go into her POV, we show her like looking, seeing that her lord, the King Croc, is dead, and her reaction to that, seeing her look around and assess and have a reaction from like almost a POV and close-ups of her expression, that starts to be her POV for a minute, which is a storytelling choice. But I didn't want to do too much of that. So my first attempt there was just a big shot of her standing in the room. We, the audience, can see the whole consequences, the aftermath, and we see her looking at it, but we don't get a close look at her reaction. And then I went from that, I erased that, and now I have a few that's more from a little closer view of her. She's going to... her face is revealed now, so her mask has come off. He recognizes her from his past. And there's nuanced emotional acting I want to capture. So she's not excited that King Croc is dead. She has mixed feelings. We'll just keep it simple, but it's very nuanced. There's going to be some bitterness. There's some hurt. There's anger, but also some relief. Her entire life is destroyed now, turned upside down. She has failed. She's dealing with that. She's being seen in her shame by her former lover, we'll say. Now that she's, changed her appearance and putting these horns in and stuff. And sold out to the lizard rulers. So there's a lot to capture in just a few panels to do it. I'm making another thumbnail here, combining some of these images I was trying to put together. From those two pages, I've got several different panels. I'm combining them into maybe one new attempt. And then we'll get onto the page and make even more changes on the page to really finalize it. I made a little comment there about like taking the POV, whether that's just showing them looking at something and then showing their reaction to it. That's sort of like a POV. I don't just mean like first person camera view. close-ups, and focusing on their reaction and what they're noticing and seeing. This sort of taking on of perspective of POV is part of your storytelling style, which can change based on the movie or the book or the comic book, but there tends to be a particular voice that an author or storyteller has that gets applied across different stories. When I love a comic book author or artist, the thing I love the most is not the way they draw figures, the way they ink, the style on it. And it's not even the way they frame their panels and arrange the panels and stuff. It is the unseen part. The way that the story plays out in my imagination, the way the movie plays out in my head when I look at their panels and I go from panel to panel. And there's a certain feeling and speed and pace and like all that to it. And this is even maybe a more specific part than just like, do they take the POV of multiple characters or stick to one? Some of that is almost like it's still part of their storytelling style, but different than this really unseen part. That when I read a book by a particular creator I can see. I like how it feels, how the story, the pace, the way time feels, how things seem to move, how the story moves in my mind. And yeah, that's my favorite thing that I want to develop in myself and that I like in other creators and seek out. I almost don't even want to think of it like analytically, to like look at their panels, look at how they're constructing their pages, how the page flows. It's more than that to me. And I almost don't want to get specific with analyzing it. Yeah, I'm not sure what the language is either. If I were to try to analyze it, I'm not sure what the language would be for this, because it's not how the page flows. It's not how you construct your panels and stuff, and how the eye moves, and like, yeah, it's not exactly those things. Yeah, it's sort of unseen, or at least it's a collection. It's the emergent quality, the collection of these elements that you employ as a storyteller, but what it gives to the audience or the reader is and something else. For me, I definitely try to put subtle acting into my characters, and so I'm seeing more about my storytelling style and what is the reader's experience when they read my books. That's really hard to see when you are the creator of it, but I think it's possible to get better at reading your own work like you are the reader. Because there's always that problem of you see how the movie's playing out in your head. You're drawing it on the page, but of course you see how it plays out in your head because it's your story. So you have that idea, and you're trying to convey it on the page. But what is the reader's experience? And I guess in some sense we're always in the dark to some degree on what someone else's experience will be, but I think it is possible to improve, and viewing yourself more objectively, or experiencing yourself. I mean, from a third eye view, from another person's perspective. So, and you could call that self-awareness. But when I look at my books, when I read my comics, sometimes I go through them. And I've heard people say they hate to look at their old work because it's not so good in their eyes anymore because they've improved, which is great because it's a sign they've improved. But if that's all you're getting out of it is kind of like this disgust for your work, you can't, if you're not going to get past that feeling, if it's that strong and you can't read it, you're not getting past it to maybe learn some other insights into yourself. Because, I mean, that's your ego. If you're like, oh, I don't like how this looks. Well, who cares what you think? We're trying to see what the reader's experience is, right? So trying to get from the third perspective. So when I read my books, I try to see what sense I'm getting from that perspective of the kind of storyteller that I am. If I had only love for this, if I'm not the creator of this book, but I'm the third party, the reader, uninterested, objective, reader with their subjective opinion. But if I take that position and I only have love for this creator, and I believe that if they're not great, they're at least they are capable of greatness. They have unique qualities, and I want to see their unique qualities flourish and blossom and get better. And if I look at it through those loving eyes, then what can I see that should blossom? Looking at yourself with those eyes, and then you have a better idea of how to blossom, how to grow, what direction to go. So I think that's something I do to try to develop in my storytelling. And I think I'd mentioned a minute ago the nuances of expressions of the acting. That's one of the things I see. I think I have a particular cinematic kind of pacing, not even like panel construction exactly, but just the way time feels to move from panel to panel. It feels more cinematic, like there's a consistent pace of time. And I try to get subtle acting. There's no cookie cutter poses that my characters are in panel to panel. And the facial expressions and acting are not simple. There's the way I experience, the way I think about my characters and the way they would be acting is complicated layers of emotion. And so I'm trying to capture that. So, what is the world? Because there's no world here. Like, this is just pencil on paper. Not even a lot of photo reference. This is like from imagination. So I'm constructing a world. I'm showing the reader a world that does not exist. And how do I see that world? That's something, that's something I'm trying to see in myself when I'm reading myself, when I'm looking at myself, is how does this person see the world? Myself. How do I seem to see the world, and how could I polish that up, make it even better, and accept it and love it for what it is? Because then it'll get better, it'll get stronger, more unique. Not necessarily more commercial, but and not necessarily for a wider audience, but it will be stronger. So yeah, I see these elements like the pacing, the acting, that yeah I'm trying to develop. And when I say, on here, I say a lot that I want to get more simple in my like more efficient and simple in my drawing. It's basically, I mean, I already do that to quite a degree, but I just want to get more immediate at the expressing of that perspective, the storytelling perspective, that it would be immediate. And I want to embrace imperfections in it, kind of messiness and like failures of anatomy and so on. Failure. If I were like a writer, I would not be writing the most eloquent, beautiful things. I would be trying to write the sharpest things, and letting it be messy. And so, you know, as a voice, as a creator, there's something in me that goes that direction, and that's what I'm doing with my art is, and it's not just the art, my storytelling, my sequential storytelling. I'm trying to go more and more in that direction, and that's what fuels this desire to be like simpler. It's just to be more immediately expressing. When I see sword, if it was just a panel of Sword's hand gripping his sword, that I would just draw it on the page, just like draw what I see in my mind, put it in that panel. It would be imperfect, but it would be directly from my perspective, my flawed perspective, and it'd be strongly stated. And then on to the next panel. I want to get better and better at that. And that fuels me. That gives me the energy, the excitement, the strength to keep going, to keep doing this work. Because in some sense, there's a lot of work to be done, but it's to get to a place where it's not work. And to try to get there sooner rather than later, not waiting until I'm perfect with anatomy and everything to get to that place of not working, but to teach myself through discipline, through the practice every day when I sit down and draw a page, to do that. So yeah, that gives me hope. And I'm excited to do it. To draw the next story after this, which I haven't written yet. I'm curious to see how I will handle this transition from this to kickstarting this book, printing it, and writing the next one and starting it. So I really don't want a gap between finishing these pages and starting the pages for the next book, but I also have done zero writing yet on book number 2, like official, words on page. So I might actually do that tonight. I think I'm going to have a few hours all to myself this evening, and I'm going to put myself in a room and start typing, start actually writing, and see what develops, and at least I'll have started it. But but this is kind of a messy spot here for me, because I haven't, before I started these pages, I wrote the story, and I spent a few months just doing reference drawings of different elements of, cities and swords and stuff, kind of developing a vocabulary for sword and sorcery stuff. I've never done that kind of stuff before. So I worked out quite a bit of how, the things in this episode were going to look, this issue. And, and I haven't done that for the next one, and I haven't written it ahead of time. So, and then throw in trying to kickstart it and get the word out and share my book. I'm going to have the full finished story. I'm pretty excited about that. And I want to share that with people. I want to get more people on board to read it, and hopefully they like it, and I get a little crowd, a little following of people that are gonna want the next book, that'll join the journey. And as I speed up my production, maybe 2 pages a week, so that 60-page books I could do 1.5 a year, or maybe I could even do 2 a year. They're not all 60 pages. I don't know. They may vary in length. But maybe I could do 2 or 3 of those a year, especially if there's an audience for it. Then I could speed up that. So I'm excited to get into that. But it's one thing to do one issue, but to keep it going consistently without a pause is a challenge. That, and I haven't crossed this bridge before exactly, because I typically, write the whole 6-issue series. I did that once, a 5-issue series, one shots, but I write the whole thing, do it, and that's it. But this is to build on in the sandbox you've already set up. You don't just get to start a new story. You've got to build with the pieces in play and add new pieces and keep the audience on board for that, believing it. That's challenging too. And I think, for me, writing interesting scenes, the pacing of dialogue and of just a single scene, I feel pretty good at that. I do have the most practice at that, so that makes sense. But the larger construction of story, that's episodic, is I feel less confident in that. And it has me stepping more into the realm of writing, that this is a particular kind of challenge that many writers know better than comic creators. Because for most comic creators, they're probably in the same boat as me. They haven't done major long-term projects. It just takes so long to make a comic, and you try other things and do other stories you want to do. But yeah, for now I'm going to stick with it regardless of the success of how many readers we get to start with. This is the book for me for now. My passion is in it. My practice and development is in this vein. And I want to tell more of it and improve in it. So I'm with it for now. Into at least another story or two, before I might have to pause and assess if readers are picking it up, if there's enough interest behind it to have readers, to have people that want it, because I am going to at some point consider that feedback. If people don't want it, I can make something else. But for now, this is for me. I'm going to do it. I also think there's an invisible line that we cross. There's a tipping point. So, and you don't know where that is, and that's kind of a problem, too, that in the decision making here, because there's a few different ways I could tell it, because it applies to a lot of things. But let's say as an artist, as a comic artist, you could be not so good, and then getting better and better, and even when you're 3 times better than you were, I don't know what that means, but when you're a lot better than you were, and you're better, and you're technically better, but you might still get very little praise, feedback, likes, like interest in your books, sales, writers knocking on your door to pay you to draw their book. You might be getting not a lot extra. You, like, in some sense, you might have like very little to no love and praise in response to your work. And then your work gets better and better, and you're still getting almost none. And then there's the invisible tipping point, where that next 1% better you got was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was, you crossed an invisible threshold, and now pros and publishers and people are seeing you on a professional level, on or just someone at a convention or online. They see your indie comic book, and all your previous work, like, people would look at it and go, that kind of looks interesting, but not actually purchase it or actually read it and follow. But then there's that invisible tipping point where it's like, if it was just that next 1% better, you would have thousands of people going, oh, I'm buying this. Like, it would be just enough better that people would actually make the purchase. And so it would seem like just success overnight, a sudden change, that, like, going from, like, no one's buying my book and now thousands of people are buying my book. And all it took was that next 1%. And I think it applies too to, like, to the quality of the book, the quality of the printing, the type of book. Like, I think books that have several in the series that are longer, that's a sort of tipping point where there's going to be people that are more interested in trying out a book because there's 3 volumes of it. So they know that if they get into it, they can continue, like, they can enjoy it more. That happens to me all the time. Like, I hear about a book, I pass on it until there's like a bunch of it, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm definitely excited to check this out. And it hits that invisible line for me that I'll buy it, and there's other people like me. And so that's also the case with how I see this book, that even if I don't get that much interest after the first issue, which, and it's 60 pages, so it's pretty big for an issue, but after this first story, after we do 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them, there's a point where it crosses that line for people, for some people, and generates more interest. And not just, a little more interest, but it could cross that tipping point where it's an incredible amount more of interest. So I think that's how the world works. Yeah, like, just, it applies to other areas too. Like, you could, like, people that, like, work out and try to, like, improve their body, and then, like, you feel like you're not improving much, and then, like, one day you wake up or something, or people notice, and you're like, wow, like, I really have a lot of muscle now, or I'm really, like, lean and fit now. And it seems like it's overnight. It's that tipping point. Or in business or something. So, yeah, I believe the world kind of works that way. So that's a case for having hope and continuing to try, because you never know how close you are to that invisible line and where the invisible lines are. So, yeah, so that's another idea. We're basically out of time. There's the finished page here. I'm just doing the final touch-ups, a little bit of whiteout to clean up lines where they kind of overextended on the panel borders or whatever. And yeah, fun little page. Yeah, this character will come back. The Dragoness character. There it is, the top part of the page, the finished with colors, letters. You can read the whole comic on my website, ikecomics.com. So, all 56 pages. New one every week. So we're just a few weeks out from the finished one. That last panel, it kind of worked out well that I was able to capture that pose with her hunched down on the ground. So a very short panel. It's not very tall, but we still have that whole pose and then that nice wide background around her. For how little space I used on the page, it was pretty effective. Getting more effective with the space, getting more out of less space on the page is nice. It will help you tell the story better and fit more in per page. All kinds of things will help with that. So that's it for this week. Be the practice of your art. I'll be doing the same over here. See you next time.